The Ark and the Great Flood. Prophet Nuh was commanded by Allah to build a massive ark despite living far from any sea, a task that seemed absurd to his people. He warned them for 950 years before the flood came, but they mocked him relentlessly. When the waters finally rose, they covered the entire earth according to the Quranic account in Surah Hud, drowning everyone except those aboard the ark. Noah had loaded pairs of animals and the few believers who trusted his message. The flood lasted for months, with waters so high that even mountains were submerged. Eventually, the ark settled on Mount Judy, and the survivors emerged to repopulate the world. The scale of this destruction remains one of the most significant collective punishments mentioned in the Quran, demonstrating both Allah's mercy to believers and his justice against persistent disbelief. The destructive wind. The people of Ad were giants, physically powerful and technologically advanced for their time, building monuments and pillars throughout their land. Prophet Hud warned them repeatedly to abandon their arrogance and worship Allah alone, but they refused, confident in their strength. According to Surah Al-Ahqaf, Allah sent a furious wind that lasted exactly 7 nights and 8 days without stopping. The wind was so powerful, it lifted people off the ground and smashed them down like hollow palm trunks, their bodies scattered across the desert. Witnesses described the wind as barren, producing no rain, only death and destruction. The roaring sound alone was terrifying enough to drive people mad before the wind even reached them. By the end, the entire civilization was erased, leaving only Hud and the small group of believers alive, while their ruins became a warning for future generations. The she-camel from stone. The Thamud people demanded a physical miracle from Prophet Saleh, something impossible that would prove his divine mission beyond doubt. They asked specifically for a camel to emerge from solid rock, and Allah granted their request. According to Surah Hud, this miraculous she-camel had special rights. One day the camel would drink from the water source. The next day the people would have their turn. The arrangement was fair, but the camel's presence was a constant test of their obedience. Despite the clear miracle, some Thamud members grew resentful, seeing the camel as a burden. They eventually killed it, hamstringing the animal in an act of defiance. 3 days later, a violent earthquake destroyed their entire civilization. Their carved stone dwellings in Madain Sali still stand today in Saudi Arabia, empty monuments to a people who rejected clear signs. Saved from Nimrod's fire, Prophet Ibrahim destroyed the idols in his city's temple, leaving only the largest one standing, to prove these statues had no power. When confronted, he suggested they ask the big idol who did it, exposing the absurdity of worshipping powerless objects. Enraged, King Nimrod ordered Ibrahim thrown into a massive fire, so large it could be seen from great distances. According to Islamic tradition, they used a catapult to launch him into the flames because the heat was too intense for anyone to approach. At that moment, Allah commanded the fire with the words recorded in Surah Al-Anbiya, "Be cool and safe upon Ibrahim." The flames lost their burning property entirely, becoming harmless. Ibrahim sat comfortably in the center of what witnesses described as a garden within the fire, emerging without a single burn, not even a singed hair or smoky smell on his clothes. The 4 birds brought to life. Prophet Ibrahim asked Allah to show him directly how the dead are brought back to life, not out of doubt, but to move from belief to certainty. Allah instructed him in Surah Al-Baqarah to take 4 birds, cut them into pieces, and mix the parts together completely. Ibrahim then placed portions of these mixed pieces on different mountains surrounding him. According to Islamic tradition, these were 4 distinct species: a peacock, a rooster, a crow, and a duck, though the Quran itself doesn't specify the types. When Ibrahim called to the birds, something extraordinary happened. The scattered pieces flew through the air, each fragment finding its proper place, bones reconnecting, flesh reforming, feathers regrowing. Within moments, 4 complete living birds flew down from the mountains and landed before Ibrahim, fully alive and responsive. This visceral demonstration proved Allah's absolute power over death and resurrection. The Ram substitution. Ibrahim saw in his dream that he must sacrifice his beloved son, and in Islam, prophets' dreams are divine revelation. He consulted his son, identified in Islamic tradition as Ismail, who was old enough to understand, and courageously agreed to submit to Allah's will. They proceeded to the place of sacrifice, with Ismail lying down willingly and Ibrahim raising the knife. At the precise moment of sacrifice, as the blade was about to strike, Allah sent down a ram from heaven as a substitute. According to Surah As-Saffat, this ram was itself a magnificent sacrifice. Ibrahim completed the ritual by sacrificing the ram instead, and both father and son were spared the ultimate trial. This event became the foundation for Eid al-Adha, where Muslims worldwide commemorate Ibrahim's willingness to sacrifice everything for Allah by slaughtering animals and distributing meat to the poor, rich, and family members. Yusuf's dream interpretations. Prophet Yusuf was given the ability to interpret dreams with perfect accuracy, a gift directly from Allah. While imprisoned unjustly in Egypt, two men shared their troubling dreams with him. One dreamed of pressing wine, the other of birds eating bread from his head. Yusuf interpreted these precisely. One would be freed and serve the king wine. The other would be executed and left for birds to consume. Both interpretations came true, exactly as predicted. Years later, the Egyptian pharaoh himself had a disturbing dream of 7 fat cows being devoured by 7 lean cows, and 7 green ears of grain followed by 7 dried ones. His magicians couldn't interpret it, but Yusuf, still in prison, explained it meant 7 years of abundance, followed by 7 years of devastating famine. His interpretation saved Egypt from starvation through careful preparation, storing grain during the good years. The staff becomes a serpent. When Allah first appeared to Musa at the burning bush, he asked what Musa was holding. Musa replied it was his staff, which he used for herding and support. Allah commanded him to throw it down, and instantly the wooden staff transformed into a massive serpent, described in Surah Al-Araf as a manifest serpent or dragon-like creature. Musa fled in terror from his own staff. Later, when confronting Pharaoh's court, Musa performed this miracle again before the assembled magicians and nobles. Pharaoh's magicians threw down their ropes and staffs, using tricks to make them appear to move. But when Musa threw his staff, it became a real serpent that proceeded to swallow every single rope and staff the magicians had thrown, consuming their illusions entirely. The serpent was so clearly supernatural that Pharaoh's own magicians immediately believed in Musa's message, prostrating themselves despite Pharaoh's threats. The radiant white hand, alongside the staff miracle, Allah gave Musa a second sign to establish his prophethood. According to Surah Taha, Musa was instructed to place his hand inside his garment, specifically under his armpit or against his side. When he withdrew it, his hand glowed with brilliant white light, so bright it illuminated the faces of everyone watching. The Quran emphasizes this was white without disease, clearly distinguishing it from leprosy or any skin condition. The light was supernatural, visible to everyone present, not a reflection or trick. When Musa placed his hand back inside his garment, it returned to its normal color and appearance. This miracle, combined with the serpent staff, gave Musa 2 undeniable proofs to present before Pharaoh. The radiant hand represented divine light and purity, while the serpent represented power and authority, together demonstrating that Musa came with genuine revelation. The parting of the Red Sea, after all the plagues, Pharaoh finally allowed the Israelites to leave Egypt, but then changed his mind and pursued them with his entire army. The Israelites found themselves trapped between Pharaoh's approaching forces and the sea, with no apparent escape. According to Surah Ash-Shu'ara, Allah commanded Musa to strike the sea with his staff. The moment the staff touched the water, it split apart, creating a dry path through the middle, with walls of water standing upright on both sides, like towering mountains. The Israelites crossed safely on completely dry ground, not mud or shallow water. When Pharaoh's army saw the path, they followed in pursuit. Once all the Israelites had crossed safely, Allah commanded the waters to return. The massive walls of water crashed down, drowning Pharaoh and his entire army instantly, preserving Pharaoh's body as a sign for future generations. Water from the rock. During their decades of wandering in the wilderness, the Israelites frequently complained about harsh conditions. When they cried out for water in the desert heat, Allah commanded Musa to strike a specific rock with his staff. According to Surah Al-Baqarah, 12 separate springs of fresh water gushed forth from this single rock, one spring for each of the 12 tribes of Israel. This divinely organized distribution prevented conflict over water resources, as each tribe knew exactly which spring belonged to them. The water flowed abundantly, enough for hundreds of thousands of people and their livestock. This wasn't a one-time event, but rather a repeated miracle during their 40 years of wandering, with the rock following them, or appearing when needed, according to various Islamic traditions. The miracle demonstrated both Allah's provision and His organizational wisdom, preventing disputes in harsh desert conditions, where water meant survival. Manna and quails from heaven. The Israelites complained constantly about the lack of diverse food during their desert journey. In response to their needs, but not their ingratitude, Allah sent down manna and quails regularly. The manna appeared each morning as a sweet substance on the ground, described as honey-like or bread-like in various interpretations. Quails, small birds, descended in large flocks that were easy to catch. According to Surah Al-Araf, this food appeared without any effort from the people, requiring no farming, hunting, or preparation. Despite this incredible provision, the Israelites grew tired of these foods and demanded vegetables, herbs, and the foods they remembered from Egypt. They complained so much that Allah eventually replaced this miraculous food with normal provisions, requiring them to work for their meals. The contrast was stark. They went from divine provision, requiring no labor, to ordinary food requiring cultivation, a consequence of their persistent ungratefulness despite clear blessings. The Mount Sinai experience. When Musa went to receive the Torah on Mount Sinai, the Israelites below began worshiping a golden calf, breaking their covenant immediately. According to Surah Al-Baqarah, when Musa returned and confronted them with their breach, Allah lifted the mountain above their heads like a massive shadow or canopy. The mountain hung suspended in the air, and they were warned that if they rejected Allah's covenant, the mountain would fall and crush them. This terrifying demonstration forced their acknowledgement. Additionally, when Musa requested to see Allah directly, Allah manifested His glory to the mountain itself. The mountain crumbled into dust from the intensity, and Musa fell unconscious from merely witnessing this power affecting the mountain. When Musa regained consciousness, he understood that no human could withstand seeing Allah directly in this life, and he asked for forgiveness for his bold request. The plagues upon Egypt. When Pharaoh repeatedly refused to free the Israelites despite clear signs, Allah sent successive plagues as escalating warnings. Surah Al-Araf lists 5 distinct plagues: the flood, locusts, lice, frogs, and blood. The rivers turned to blood, making them undrinkable and killing the fish. Frogs emerged in overwhelming numbers, invading homes, beds, and food supplies. Lice infested people and animals, causing constant scratching and disease. Locusts came in massive swarms that darkened the sky, devouring all crops and vegetation. Each plague ended when Pharaoh promised to free the Israelites, but he broke his promise every time once the suffering stopped. The plagues affected only the Egyptians, while the Israelites living in Goshen remained untouched, demonstrating precise divine control. These signs progressively intensified until Pharaoh's final refusal led to the parting of the sea and his drowning. Iron made soft. Prophet Dawood was granted an extraordinary ability that revolutionized metalworking and armor production. According to Surah Saba, Allah made iron soft in Dawood's hands, pliable like clay or warm wax, requiring no furnace or forge. He could mold and shape iron directly with his bare hands, bending and forming it as easily as a potter works with clay. Dawood used this gift to create the first interlocking chainmail armor, a revolutionary defensive technology. The Quran specifically instructs him to make the chains precise in measurement, neither too loose nor too tight, ensuring maximum protection and flexibility. This miracle served a practical purpose, allowing Dawood to equip armies with superior armor, while also demonstrating that even the hardest substances submit to Allah's will. The combination of this gift with his melodious voice for praising Allah made Dawood a unique prophet who excelled in both spiritual devotion and practical craftsmanship. Mountains and birds glorifying. Prophet Dawood had an extraordinarily beautiful voice that moved not just human hearts, but all of creation. According to Surah Hud, when Dawood would praise Allah, the mountains themselves would echo and amplify his glorifications, producing sounds in harmony with his voice. This occurred repeatedly at dawn and dusk, with the mountains joining his worship sessions. Additionally, birds would gather in large flocks whenever Dawood began praising Allah, circling above him and adding their own sounds to create a natural chorus. Surah Al-Anbiya confirms that these mountains and birds were subdued to glorify with him, meaning they participated actively, not as echoes, but as conscious worship. This wasn't metaphorical poetry, but a literal miracle witnessed by others. The phenomenon demonstrated Dawood's special connection with creation and showed that all things, even apparently inanimate mountains, are capable of recognizing and worshiping their creator when commanded. Understanding animal speech, Prophet Sulaiman inherited prophethood and kingship from his father Dawood, but he also received unique gifts never given to any other prophet. According to Surah An-Naml, Sulaiman was taught the language of birds and could understand the speech of all animals. This wasn't limited to birds, but extended to ants, horses, and all creatures. He could communicate with them, understand their concerns, and even command them. In one famous account, an ant warned its colony to hide because Suleiman's vast army was approaching, and Suleiman heard this warning clearly, smiling at the ant's words. Later, a hoopoe bird brought him intelligence about a distant kingdom, reporting details it had observed. Suleiman specifically thanked Allah for this unique gift, recognizing it as a special favor that gave him unprecedented knowledge and control. No other prophet could speak with animals so comprehensively. Control over the wind. Among Suleiman's many miraculous gifts was complete authority over the wind itself. According to Surah Saba, the wind traveled at his command, covering distances that would normally take a month in just a morning's journey, and another month's distance in the afternoon. This wasn't violent or destructive wind, but smooth, controlled currents that served as transportation. Islamic traditions describe Sulaiman traveling on a throne or flying carpet, though the Quran doesn't specify the exact method, only that the wind carried him and his court. The wind was gentle enough to transport people safely, but powerful enough to cover vast distances rapidly. This gift allowed Sulaiman to govern his expansive kingdom effectively, visiting far regions that would normally require months of travel. The wind obeyed his commands completely, starting, stopping, and changing direction at his will, demonstrating his unique authority granted by Allah. Control over jinn. Sulaiman was given authority over the jinn, supernatural beings created from smokeless fire, forcing them to serve him in various capacities. According to Surah Saba, jinn worked as builders, divers, and craftsmen under his command, creating architectural marvels, diving for pearls in dangerous depths, and producing artistic works. They constructed sanctuaries, enormous statues, basins as large as reservoirs, and massive fixed cooking pots. Some jinn were rebellious and had to be kept in chains as punishment. The most remarkable aspect of this control was revealed when Suleiman died. He died standing upright, leaning on his staff, and the jinn continued working because they didn't realize he was dead. Only when a creature from the earth ate through his staff and his body collapsed did the jinn discover they had been serving a dead king, proving they couldn't truly see the unseen. The hoopoe bird's intelligence. In Suleiman's court, even animals served official roles. One day during a military inspection, Suleiman noticed a hoopoe bird was absent without permission. According to Surah Hud, Suleiman threatened punishment unless the bird had a valid excuse. When the hoopoe returned, it brought remarkable intelligence from a distant land, reporting that it had found a kingdom ruled by a queen whose people worshipped the sun instead of Allah. The bird described the queen's magnificent throne and the wealth of her kingdom in detail. Rather than dismissing this as impossible, Suleiman tested the information by sending a letter with the hoopoe to this queen. Everything the bird reported proved accurate. The queen was, indeed, the Queen of Sheba in what is now Yemen, and she did possess an extraordinary throne. The hoopoe's reconnaissance mission became the beginning of a remarkable story of conversion. Queen of Sheba's throne transported. After the hoopoe bird's report, Suleiman decided to summon the Queen of Sheba to his court. Before she could arrive, he wanted to obtain her famous throne as both a test and a demonstration of power. According to Surah Hud, Suleiman asked his court who could bring the throne from Yemen before the queen arrived. A powerful jinn offered to transport it within hours, but someone described as having knowledge of the scripture said he could bring it faster. In the blink of an eye, before Suleiman could rise from his seat, the massive throne appeared before him in Jerusalem. The throne had traveled hundreds of miles instantaneously through miraculous means. When the queen arrived and saw her throne somehow present in Suleiman's court, she was astonished and recognized the sign, leading to her conversion to monotheism. Islamic tradition identifies the knowledgeable man as Asif bin Barkia. Survival in the whale, Prophet Yunus became frustrated with his people's persistent disbelief and left them in anger before receiving Allah's permission to depart. According to Surah As-Safat, while traveling by ship, a storm arose, and the sailors decided to cast lots to lighten the load. Yunus was chosen and thrown into the sea, where a large whale or fish immediately swallowed him whole. Inside the whale's belly, in complete darkness, Yunus realized his mistake and began praising Allah and repenting intensely. The Quran states that if he hadn't glorified Allah in that darkness, he would have remained in the whale's belly until the day of resurrection. His sincere repentance caused Allah to command the whale to cast him onto shore. Yunus emerged alive, though weakened by the digestive acids and lack of light. Allah caused a plant to grow over him for shade and healing, and Yunus eventually returned to his people, who had repented in his absence. Birth of Yahya. Despite old age, Prophet Zechariah served as a guardian of the temple in Jerusalem, taking care of Maryam while she devoted herself to worship. Despite his righteous service, Zechariah was elderly and childless, with a wife who was barren and past childbearing age. According to Surah Maryam, he prayed privately inside the temple sanctuary, asking Allah for an heir who would continue his prophetic mission. In his supplication, he described how his bones had weakened and his hair had turned gray with age, making a child seem impossible by natural means. Angels appeared to him while he was praying in the sanctuary and announced that Allah would grant him a son named Yahya, who would be noble, chaste, and a prophet. Zachariah was shocked and asked how this could happen given his advanced age and his wife's condition. The angel replied that it was easy for Allah, who had created Zechariah from nothing. Zechariah's sign of silence. When told about the miraculous birth of his son Yahya, Zechariah requested a sign to confirm this prophecy would truly come to pass. Allah gave him a sign that involved his own body. According to Surah Maryam, he would be unable to speak to people for 3 complete nights, despite having no physical defect or illness. During this period, Zechariah could only communicate through hand gestures and written signs. But he was commanded to continue praising Allah morning and evening through these gestures. This temporary muteness served multiple purposes. It confirmed the angelic message was genuine, gave Zechariah time to reflect on the coming miracle, and demonstrated divine control even over basic human functions like speech. After the 3 days ended, his speech returned naturally. Shortly afterward, his elderly wife conceived, and Yahya was born, fulfilling the prophecy exactly as announced. Virgin birth of Isa. Maryam dedicated herself to worship in the temple from childhood, living in a special sanctuary. One day, according to Surah Maryam, an angel appeared to her in the form of a perfect human man. Terrified, she sought refuge in Allah from him. The angel identified himself as a messenger from Allah, announcing he would grant her a pure son. Maryam protested that she had never been touched by any man and wasn't unchaste. The angel explained this was Allah's decree, that he creates what he wills, and that Isa would be a sign for humanity. Surah Al-Imran specifies that Allah created Isa through his word, just as he created Adam from dust without parents. The conception occurred when the angel breathed into Maryam, and she became pregnant without any human father. This virgin birth was a miracle, demonstrating Allah's power to create life through any means he chooses, outside natural processes. Isa speaks from the cradle. When Maryam returned to her people carrying the infant Isa, they immediately accused her of immorality, asking how an unmarried woman could have a child. The accusation was devastating, as Maryam came from a respected priestly family. According to Surah Maryam, instead of defending herself, Maryam pointed to the baby in her arms. The people thought she was mocking them, asking how they could speak to an infant. At that moment, the newborn Isa spoke clearly in complete sentences from his cradle, declaring himself a servant of Allah. He announced that Allah had given him the gospel scripture and made him a prophet, blessed him wherever he went, commanded him to pray and give charity, and made him dutiful to his mother. The baby specifically denied any claim to divinity, calling himself a servant, not a god. This miraculous speech vindicated Maryam completely and established Isa's prophetic mission from birth, creating birds from clay. Among the miracles Allah permitted Isa to perform was the ability to create life from lifeless matter. According to Surah Al-Imran, Isa would fashion bird shapes from clay, complete with wings, beaks, and detailed features. After forming these clay figures, he would breathe into them, and by Allah's permission, they would transform into real living birds and fly away. The Quran emphasizes repeatedly that this occurred by Allah's permission, clarifying that Isa had no independent power to create life, but rather was permitted to channel divine power for this sign. The miracle paralleled Allah's creation of Adam from clay, demonstrating Isa's special prophetic status. Islamic tradition mentions these were specifically bat-shaped birds. This sign was meant to prove to the Israelites that Isa came with genuine revelation, though many still rejected him. The miracle appears in some non-canonical Christian texts as well, suggesting a shared tradition. Healing the blind and leper. Isa performed numerous healing miracles that established his prophetic authority. According to Surah Al-Imran, he healed people born blind, those who had never possessed sight from birth, which physicians considered impossible to cure. He also cured leprosy, a disfiguring and contagious skin disease that made people outcasts in society. Both conditions were thought utterly incurable by human medicine in that era. The Quran repeatedly emphasizes these healings occurred by Allah's permission, not through Isa's independent power. The healings were instantaneous and complete, not gradual treatments requiring time. A person born blind would suddenly see perfectly, able to describe colors and recognize faces immediately. Lepers would find their diseased skin transformed to healthy flesh in moments. These miracles served dual purposes. They demonstrated compassion for suffering people while proving Isa's message came from Allah. Despite the undeniable nature of these signs, many authorities rejected him out of political and religious motives. Raising the dead, the most powerful miracle granted to Isa, was authority over death itself. According to Surah Al-Imran, Isa raised dead people back to life by Allah's permission. These weren't people who had just died, but those who had been buried and were decomposing in graves. When Isa commanded them to rise, they would emerge from their tombs, walking and speaking, reuniting with shocked family members who thought they would never see them again. The Quran doesn't specify how many people Isa resurrected or name any particular cases, focusing instead on Allah's permission being the source of this power. This miracle directly demonstrated Allah's control over life and death, showing that the day of resurrection, when all people will rise from graves, is entirely within Allah's power. Some people witnessing these resurrections believed in Isa's message, recognizing divine authority in his actions. Others, particularly religious authorities, felt threatened and plotted against him despite witnessing undeniable evidence. The table spread from heaven. Isa's disciples, despite witnessing numerous miracles, requested one more sign to strengthen their faith and celebrate as a festival. According to Surah Al-Ma'idah, which is named after this very event, they asked Isa to pray for a table of food to descend from heaven. Isa initially hesitated, questioning their faith after seeing so many signs, but they insisted they wanted to eat from it, reassure their hearts, know his truthfulness with certainty, and be witnesses to this miracle. Isa prayed to Allah, asking for a table spread with food from heaven to serve as a festival for the first and last of them, and as a sign from Allah. Allah agreed, but warned severely that anyone who disbelieved after witnessing this miracle would receive a punishment unlike any given to anyone in the worlds. The table descended, laden with food, though the Quran doesn't specify exactly what foods appeared. Islamic traditions suggest fish and bread. Knowledge of the unseen. Given to Isa, among Isa's miraculous abilities was knowledge of things hidden from normal human perception. According to Surah Al-Imran, he could tell people exactly what they had eaten in their homes privately and what they had stored away in their houses, information impossible to know through natural means. When someone visited him, Isa might describe their breakfast in detail or reveal items hidden in their storage that no one else knew about. This knowledge came as revelation from Allah, demonstrating that Isa's message was genuine divine communication. The ability served as both a sign of his prophethood and a practical tool for calling people to truth, since they couldn't deny what he revealed about their private lives. This gift showed that nothing is hidden from Allah's knowledge, and he shares specific information with his chosen prophets as proof of their authentic mission. People found this gift both amazing and unsettling, as their secrets became transparent before Isa. The night journey and ascension. The night journey, called Isra and Miraj, occurred during a difficult period when Prophet Muhammad faced intense persecution in Makkah. According to Surah Al-Isra, in a single night, Muhammad was transported from the sacred mosque in Makkah to Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem, a distance requiring weeks of caravan travel. From Jerusalem, he ascended through the seven heavens on a creature called Burak, described in Hadith as a white animal smaller than a mule but larger than a donkey. In each heaven, he met previous prophets including Adam, Yahya, Isa, Yusuf, Idris, Harun, Musa, and Ibrahim. He reached Sidrat al-Muntaha, the furthest boundary where even Angel Jibril could not continue. There, Muhammad received the command for 5 daily prayers, originally 50, but reduced through Musa's advice. When Muhammad returned to Makkah and described Jerusalem's details accurately despite never visiting, some believed while others mocked. The splitting of the moon. During Muhammad's prophethood in Makkah, the Quraysh disbelievers demanded a clear miracle to prove his message. According to Surah Al-Qamar, the moon literally split into 2 distinct visible parts that separated in the night sky. The split was witnessed by people in Makkah, with the 2 halves remaining separated long enough for observers to see the gap clearly between them. Some reports suggest the halves moved apart significantly before rejoining. Despite this undeniable celestial sign, the disbelievers dismissed it as passing magic or sorcery, claiming Muhammad had somehow cast a spell on their eyes. They reasoned that if this were real, travelers from other regions would report it too. The Quran records their rejection, noting that no matter what sign came, they would refuse to believe. The chapter begins with, "The hour has drawn near, and the moon has split," treating it as a historical fact and a harbinger of the approaching day of judgment. The Quran as a linguistic miracle. The Quran itself is presented as Muhammad's greatest and eternal miracle, unlike temporary physical miracles of previous prophets. According to Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah challenged anyone who doubted its divine origin to produce even a single chapter like it. This challenge has stood for over 1,400 years without anyone successfully meeting it, despite Arabic being the language of master poets and eloquent speakers. The Quran's linguistic perfection operates on multiple levels. Its rhythm and rhyme scheme don't follow pre-existing Arabic poetry rules. It contains no internal contradictions, despite being revealed over 23 years. It includes knowledge beyond 7th century Arabia's scientific understanding, and it has remained unchanged in its original language while being memorized by millions. Even Muhammad's fiercest enemies, who were expert linguists, recognized its extraordinary eloquence while refusing to believe. The text's preservation, global impact, and literary beauty continue to serve as perpetual evidence of its divine origin. The people of the cave, a group of young believers, fled their city to escape religious persecution under a tyrannical ruler. According to Surah Al-Kahf, they took refuge in a cave along with their dog, seeking to preserve their faith rather than submit to forced idol worship. Allah caused them to fall into a deep sleep that lasted, according to the Quran's precise statement, 300 solar years or 309 lunar years. During this time, the sun moved across the sky in such a way that its rays never struck them directly despite the cave opening, and they turned periodically in their sleep to prevent bed sores. When they finally awoke, they thought only a day had passed and sent one member to buy food with their old coins. The merchant recognized the coins as ancient currency, and the entire city realized these young men had slept through 3 centuries. Their story became known, and their miraculous preservation demonstrated Allah's power over time itself. The dead man and the yellow cow. In the time of Bani Israel, a wealthy man was murdered, and nobody knew who committed the crime. The situation threatened to create tribal conflict and false accusations. According to Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah commanded them to sacrifice a cow, a simple instruction that should have required simple obedience. Instead, the Israelites complicated matters by asking unnecessary questions. What kind of cow? What color? What age? Each question made the requirements more specific and the cow harder to find. Finally, Allah specified it must be a yellow cow, neither old nor young, not used for plowing or irrigation, bright yellow in color, almost pure. This rare specification meant only one family owned such a cow, and they charged an enormous price. After finally sacrificing this expensive cow, Allah commanded them to strike the dead man with a piece of it. Miraculously, the dead man came back to life temporarily and identified his killer before dying again. The man dead for 100 years, a man passed by a city that had been completely destroyed and left in ruins. According to Surah Al-Baqarah, he wondered aloud how Allah could possibly bring this devastated place back to life after death. At that moment, Allah caused him to die and remain dead for exactly 100 years. When Allah resurrected him, the first question asked was how long he had been there. The man guessed a day or part of a day, having no sense of the century that had passed. Allah told him to look at his food and drink, which remained fresh and unchanged despite the century, demonstrating supernatural preservation. Then Allah directed him to look at his donkey, whose bones had completely decayed and scattered. Before the man's eyes, the donkey's bones flew together, assembled into a skeleton, became clothed with flesh, and the donkey stood up alive and braying. This dramatic demonstration taught the man personally about resurrection power and answered his original question about bringing dead things back to life. Protection of the Kaaba from Elephant Army. In the year of Prophet Muhammad's birth, around 570 CE, an Abyssinian Christian ruler named Abraha led a massive military expedition to destroy the Kaaba in Makkah. According to Surah Al-Fil, he brought war elephants, enormous and terrifying beasts that the Arabs had rarely seen. His army was well equipped and confident, marching toward the sacred house with destructive intent. As they approached Makkah, suddenly the sky darkened with flocks of birds, described as coming in waves. Each bird carried small stones, which historical accounts describe as being about the size of chickpeas or lentils. The birds dropped these stones with incredible precision onto the soldiers, and wherever the stones struck, the flesh began to rapidly decay and disintegrate, creating wounds that spread like disease. The army fled in panic, and Abraha himself died from this affliction. The event became known as the Year of the Elephant, forever marking Muhammad's birth year and demonstrating Allah's protection of his sacred house. If you want to see more, click the video on screen now.